Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Struhar. I'm a senior here at Cody College, majoring in organizational leadership and minoring in dance and theater. I spent my entire academic junior year studying abroad in England, and I am here today to tell you about that experience. So I did a direct enrollment program at Edge Hill University. This meant that I was directly enrolled in the university just as any other student might be who is actually from the UK. Edge Hill University is located in Ormskirk, Lancashire, England. This photo is actually a picture of my campus. This building with all these windows, as you can see over here, is actually where the majority of my classes were. And I had this beautiful view over the water from my classrooms. It was wonderful. I was supposed to be there from September 10th, 2019 until May 22nd, 2020. Of course, these dates were altered by the worldwide pandemic that happened. Edge Hill University as a whole went online for the semester on March 16th of 2020. This was a Monday. I actually flew home that following Saturday and I landed back in the United States on March 21st, 2020. My journey home was less than ideal. This flight that I actually ended up flying home on was the third flight that my family had booked for me because my previous two had gotten canceled. And then suddenly there were not a lot of airports accepting international flights. So the closest airport that I could fly into was Chicago. And my father actually drove about 7 hours to Chicago to pick me up to avoid me having to go through any more airports than necessary. This was also before masks were being recommended. I wore one because I'm a nail biter in nervous situations, and the last thing I wanted to be doing was putting my hands in my mouth on an international airport. So here's a picture of me the day I got home. This was the first time being on American soil in about 7 months for me, and I was just so excited to be home. Some of my classes continued to meet at class time on Zoom. This was slightly frustrating for me because my 9 a.m. courses at Edge Hill quickly became 3 a.m. for me. Luckily, we had spring break and reading week, so the weeks that I was meeting on Zoom for my classes, I only ended up doing this for about 3 weeks total. It wasn't necessarily the end of the world, and my professors were extremely forgiving for my situation. If I accidentally missed a class, they would send me the link so that I could review it on my own time, which I did, and they were working with me very kindly. Those classes that I was in that didn't continue meeting online on Zoom went asynchronous for the semester, and we were able to finish the semester at our own pace, and I really appreciated this. Once I did get home, I ended up spending 2 weeks in quarantine in my own home. I think the worst part about this quarantine was seeing my parents for the first time in 7 months and not being able to even give them a hug when I got home. It was really hard, but spending those 2 weeks in quarantine in our guest suite was more than worth it for when I was finally able to spend time with my family and share all of my stories that I had experienced with them. So I'm now going to tell you a little bit about Ormskirk. Ormskirk is a small little town. It's about 30 minutes by train to Liverpool. It's also in northern England. So I was actually closer to Scotland than I was to London. London, I did go a few times to London, but it was about a 6.5 hour bus journey to get there. A fun fact about Ormskirk is that they have a market every Monday and Thursday. This is actually one of the oldest markets in the world, and the market has been happening every single week since the 1400s, which absolutely blows my mind to think about, but it is so fun. There's fresh produce and meat, and there are artists there, and every week there are new things at the market, and it's really neat to just go to the market, even if you don't get anything, just to walk through it. The population of Ormskirk is about 27,000 people that live there year round, and the student population of Edge Hill University is about 17,000. So when class is in session, the town of Ormskirk grows by almost 33%, which I think is insane, but really neat, because anytime you go out, you always run into your classmates or other Edge Hill students, which is really neat. So I took 6 courses while there at Edge Hill University, which might sound a little bit interesting, because in your head when you're first hearing about this, it probably sounds like I only took 3 classes a semester, which isn't necessarily true. So in the fall semester, I took leadership, culture, and change, people and organizations. And then in the spring semester, I took managing people and employability in the creative industries. And then I also took strategic management and research methods 1, which were actually year-long classes. Employability in the creative industries was my favorite class that I took there. It was actually also the only class that I took there that didn't pertain to my organizational leadership major. Employability in the creative industries was a musical theater course that I took, and we actually learned a lot of things that apply to everyday jobs not in the creative industries. So I learned about how to write a resume, how to act in an interview, how to audition, which is musical theater, but all of these things that I will definitely take with me and that will help me be successful beyond the classroom after graduation. Each one of my courses also transferred as being worth 5 to 6 credits just because of the class load and the grading system there. I also had the wonderful opportunity to volunteer with the International Office my 2nd semester. I was the only American who did the study abroad program for the entire year. So when new study abroad students came in the spring semester, a lot of the things that they were doing for the first week, I had already been through, and I had the great opportunity to give these students their very first campus tours, to let them know how our food court worked. I got to show them into their rooms, all of these wonderful things that I didn't necessarily plan on doing, but over the winter break, I didn't have a lot to do. So I just spent a lot of time in the international office, helping prepare the office to let the new students into the campus. And then I welcomed them to the campus once they got there. And this was one of my favorite memories. I met my very best friend while giving her a campus tour and spending this first week with her, welcoming her to the campus in January. And I still talk to her every single day. I am so thankful that my volunteer opportunity led me to meeting my best friend. There were some excursions included that the International Office took us on. This photo is actually taken at the Conway Castle in Wales. The first semester, we went to the Conway Castle in Wales. We actually just visited the whole city of Conway. And then we also went to the Lake District, which was absolutely beautiful. It has mountains and lakes and rivers, and the Lake District is just stunning. And I really do wish that I had gotten to go again on my own to explore a little bit more than just spending a few hours there. The second semester, we went to Chester, England, and we were supposed to go to Blackpool later in the semester, but things got cut short and we weren't able to go. And then both semesters, within the first week, we went on a sponsored trip to Liverpool because it was so nearby, and we just spent the day there. I also want to take a moment to talk about the wonderful opportunity I had to be a part of Edge Hill University Extreme. In my first few weeks there, I auditioned for and actually made the university's competitive cheer team and the competitive dance team for the university. And the experiences that I had rehearsing with these girls 5 hours a week, and just, I really wish I could put into words how much this experience with this team meant to me. I don't know if I'll ever think of the words, but I absolutely never thought of myself as being a D1 athlete in my college career, and I had the opportunity to do that abroad, and I will never forget the memories that I made with this team, whether it was on the mat at a competition, on the bus on the way there, or in rehearsal on a Tuesday night. I loved being a part of this team. I'm so thankful that the coaches saw me in the auditions and took a chance on me and let me be the only American on the team. I am so thankful that I had that opportunity. So there were some costs involved in my experience. The tuition at Edge Hill University for the study abroad program is about 13,000 US dollars a semester. This included classes and books, housing, about 50 pounds per week for campus food. My flights were going to be about 500 US dollars each way. Of course, when you fly home in a pandemic internationally with 3 checked bags, it's a little bit more than that, but that was an unexpected cost. And then my spending money, I spent about 5,000 US dollars a semester, but this included everything else that wasn't tuition and flights. This included all of my off-campus food and drink, my phone plan, my extra travel, all the souvenirs I got, and my cheer dues. I'm also so thankful that I was able to forward over 70% of my CAUTI and PEO scholarships to Edge Hill University to help cover the cost of my tuition. I would have not had the opportunity to spend the 7 months that I did abroad without the help of my CAUTI and PEO scholarships. And I am so glad that CAUTI offers the opportunity to forward those scholarships you get onto your other institution, because there are a lot of institutions in America that do not offer that to their students. And I am forever grateful that I was able to have this opportunity because of the scholarships I received here at CAUTI. I lived in an apartment style accommodation, and I had my own bedroom. And in my room, there was a bed, a sink, which was actually really nice to have in my room, a wardrobe, a desk, a bedside table, and a shelving unit. I then shared a bathroom, kitchen, and living area with 4 other students, so there were 5 of us total. These were mixed gendered apartments, and my first semester, I actually lived with all men, which was a new experience for me. And I have actually never really lived with men my age. I'm an only child, so I didn't have brothers growing up, and my only experience living with men is my dad. So this was a new experience, and I learned a lot from that alone. I also had the opportunity to live entirely with UK students, so I got to learn a lot really fast about the culture just by spending time with my flatmates. So here are some expectations versus reality. If you've seen me on campus, you know that my typical wardrobe is throwing on a pair of leggings and maybe a sweater. And that is not common, at least in Northern England. Girls get up early and they put on makeup and curl their hair before class. They always look so nice and so well put together, and they're absolutely stunning. And it took me a while to get into the habit of looking like them, if that makes sense. But I also actually learned how to curl my hair for the first time while I was there. I'd never gotten into a habit of being able to get my super straight, naturally straight hair to curl. And they taught me a lot about makeup tips, hair, and I just learned a lot about that kind of stuff there. The nightlife, it's common to go out on a school night, and I was not expecting that. My campus actually had 3 bars and a club on campus. This was actually my preferred way to go out because it was on campus within walking distance, and no outside members of the community were allowed in the bars or clubs. So everyone that was in there was a student, and that actually just made me feel a lot safer about going out. The grading system, I was unprepared for. I have now adjusted to CAUTI's grading system, and I work hard on my assignments, and typically my grades reflect that. The grading system in the UK, a 70% is incredibly difficult to get, and the 70% is typically seen as ready for academic publication. And so when I got grades that were less than 70%, I was scared because that's not something that I'm necessarily used to here in the American grading system. So it did take some adjustment, and I kind of wish that I had a little bit more preparation on that. The last thing that was a little bit different than I expected it to be was pedestrian travel. My campus was about 1.25 miles away from town. And here in America, especially being raised in a small town in the Midwest, we use cars for everything. I sometimes drive from campus to I Don't Care, which is about 3 blocks away. And just walking all the time to everything, anything under than about 4 miles, people just walk to, because that their cities are set up and their towns are set up in a way that encourages and protects pedestrians walking. And that was just brand new to me. It wasn't anything that I had experienced. And I got really good at walking on cobblestone in heels. It took a long time to practice, though. There were a few things that gave me culture shock. One of those is the Scouse accent. So as I mentioned before, where I was staying near Liverpool was a long ways away from London. And when I think of the English accent, I think of the posh London accent. And that is not at all how the people spoke where I was. The people where I was spoke in an accent that was actually closer to a Scottish accent than it was the London accent. And if you've ever heard a Scottish accent, you know how difficult it can be to understand sometimes. There were some times that I was walking down the street and there would be somebody standing off to the side on their phone, and I didn't realize until I was right next to them that they were even speaking English. It took me a long time to be able to identify phrases and the way they enunciate vowels for me to fully understand what they were saying. Another one is sidewalk etiquette. So I am used to walking on the right side, going up on the stairs on the right side, and every time I did that, I would run into somebody. And that is because they drive on the left side. So they often walk on the left side. And that just kind of was new to me. And I felt bad every time I bumped into somebody. But as soon as I would apologize and say, I'm so sorry, they could tell exactly by the way that I said, I'm so sorry, that I was an American, and they were really forgiving and understanding. The people from Northern England are actually a lot kinder than you would expect. A third thing that gave me culture shock was how often people would ask me if I was okay. And here, when people ask me if I'm okay, I immediately think that I look like something's wrong. And I do sometimes get that a lot because I kind of have a resting sad face. But every time somebody asked me if I was okay, I'd be like, oh, no, yeah, like, no, I'm fine. And they would just kind of look at me funny. And that's because are you okay means how are you? How's your day going? And I didn't know that for almost a week. And not asking it back was almost disrespectful because it sounded like I didn't care how they were doing. So are you okay? The correct response is I'm good, and you. But I was responding to it with I'm fine, nothing's wrong, I'm okay. And that took a little bit of getting used to. Another thing that gave me culture shock was how touchy and feely the people are. Now, I'm from the Midwest. We are huge huggers, but they are huge huggers, and they won't necessarily kiss you on the cheek. But it was super common for when I met a man for the first time that they would kiss my hand, and that was not something that I was used to, and it took me a while to get used to. They're just a very touchy-feely, kind culture there in Northern England. This was also the first time that I had ever experienced homesickness. I have been leaving home for dance camps and other kinds of things since I was about 6 years old. My parents put me on my first flight to New York alone for the first time when I was just 13. So I've been leaving and spending extended periods of time away from home for a long time. Here at Cody, I actually only live about 4.5 hours away from home, so I'm able to travel home quite often. And I didn't even get homesick until about late November. And the international office threw this wonderful Thanksgiving meal for the American students, and we could bring our friends so that they could experience Thanksgiving for the first time, because that's an American holiday and it's not celebrated there. And as we were sitting there at our Thanksgiving meal, I looked around at all of my wonderful American friends that I had met, and I realized that they were all going home to their families in 2 weeks. And I wasn't going to get to do that. I was going to be alone on campus for our 6 week winter break without any of my American friends around. And that moment really hit me hard. And that was my first time experiencing homesickness. And it was really difficult, but it changed a lot of how I view how strong I am. And I am thankful that I had that experience. There were also some things that surprised me about the culture that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I mentioned before strangers' kindness, of how forgiving they were when I would bump into them. People were just so kind, and I was not expecting this. I felt like oftentimes when I go into a city the size of Liverpool or larger, that people just kind of give you the cold shoulder, they grunt at you, that kind of thing. They were not like this at all in Liverpool, in my experience. Another thing is how easy and affordable public transportation is to use. I keep on repeating this, but I'm from the Midwest. There's no such thing as public transportation in Southwest Iowa. It just doesn't exist. And so when I found out that towns the size of Ormskirk with 27,000 people in them have public transportation systems and trains that run to the city and things like this, it just blew my mind. And using public transportation, I mentioned earlier that Liverpool is about a 30-minute train ride into the city. I was able to and went to Liverpool once, sometimes twice a week, at the cost of just $3 to $4 round trip. Another thing, and you can see them here, is the police. I have had both positive and negative experiences with the police here in the United States, but I had nothing but positive experiences with the police in the UK. They were incredibly kind and helpful, and they were all over the city, and they were actually the first people that I would turn to if I needed to find something or if I had gotten turned around. I always was able to go up to the police officers and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and they would sometimes even walk me to where I was going to help me out. And I was so thankful. And yeah, I just think they were great. So here are some photos of the opportunities of international personal travel that I did. I will go around. These aren't all of the photos, but I want to tell you a little bit about this card that I did. I actually stole this idea from Pinterest, but I created this card, and at the top it says Study Abroad 2019 to 2020. And that little dot in the middle, you can't tell from these photos, but it's actually a quarter. And it's actually an Iowa quarter. And so I took it with me everywhere I went, because to me, it felt like I had a little piece of home with me. And I took it in front of all of these wonderful landmarks that I got to see for the first time in my life. And I actually still have the card at home, and I'm planning on printing out all of these photos and creating a little photo album for myself along with the original card, so that I can have the physical thing that went with me all of these places and saw all of the places that I did forever. So I went to this top left photo right here. That's Rome. This is Liverpool. This one in the top right, that's Athens, Greece. In the center here is Vienna, Austria. Bottom left is also Rome. This one right next to it is Manchester, England. There's London, England right here. And then the bottom right, that's actually the Lake District in England. I had also planned to spend my spring break in Paris, Venice, and Berlin. That, of course, didn't happen. And while I'm heartbroken that it didn't happen, now I just have an excuse to go back and finish the memories I didn't get to finish creating. So this is a photo of me in London. This was my first time ever going to London. This was actually taken in about mid-October. I had only been in the country for a little under 6 weeks. And as I mentioned before with homesickness, I learned a lot about myself in this experience. I learned that I can be a lot more independent than I think I can. And I learned how to take care of myself, and I learned a lot about the culture and how to make friends, and that it's okay to ask for help when you need it. I learned so much in this experience, and there's so much that I will never be able to put into words. But Mary Ann Radmacher did put a little bit of wish of what I want to put into words, and she once said, "I am not the same having seen the moon shine on the other side of the world." Thank you so much for taking the time to hear about my study abroad experience. And if you ever have the opportunity to leave the country and experience another culture, please do it. Thank you.